All right, good morning. Thank you for joining us today. I am Deanna Garner, Recycling Market Development Program Manager here at IDEM. All microphones are currently muted. For attendance tracking, please take a moment to write your name and affiliation in the chat box. We will be taking questions and comments from the public at today's meeting. All participants will be able to unmute themselves and ask questions or make comments at the appropriate times. If you have a question or technical issue during the presentation, please use the raise hand or chat feature. To access raise hand and chat features, at the bottom of your screen, depending on your device, you'll see a menu bar. You may have to move your mouse or touch your screen for the menu bar to pop up. In the middle of that menu, there is a chat icon, which you can click on to show the chat dialog. You should also see the raise hand option. Please utilize the raise hand or chat features if you have any questions or comments, and you will be called upon at the appropriate time. For those on the phone, if you have a question or comment, you can raise your hand by pressing 9, and we will call on you at the appropriate time. When called upon, you'll need to unmute your phone by pressing *6. For everyone in today's meeting, please identify yourself when speaking. If any members of the media have joined us, please utilize the chat feature or email at media@idem.in.gov if you have any questions or if you would like to schedule an interview. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on IDEM's website at recycle.in.gov. And with that, I'll turn the meeting over to our board chair who will be leading today's meeting.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for your attendance. My name's Bruce Burrow, and I would like to call the May 6th, 2021 meeting of the Indiana Recycling Market Development Board to order. Welcome all of you. Glad to see everyone's doing well. And the first item of business is the consideration and approval of the February 1st, 2021 Recycling Market Development Board meeting summary. Has everyone had the opportunity to review the transcripts?
Yes.
Are there any changes, clarifications, any notes that need changed in the transcripts? Hearing none, can I have a motion to approve transcripts?
So move.
Motion by
Terry Guerin.
I have a second by Ms. Weger. Any discussion? All in favor, we'll vote by just raising our hands on this one. So all in favor? Any opposed? And with that, the motion carries. Thank you very much. And the next order of business that we have is an update by Ms. Julia Wickert, the Assistant Commissioner, Office of Program Support and Agricultural Liaison from IDEM. Good morning, Julia.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Recycling Market Development Board. It's great to see all of you. I'm excited that we've got our entire recycling team on the call, and we're going to take some time this morning to introduce those folks to you. We've got some new faces, some exciting energy coming to the table, and I think you'll be pleased with the team that we have assembled, and some new people, and some also a lot of institutional knowledge that is around the table on recycling. So exciting times at IDEM for recycling. Just a few updates, and I'm not going to steal any of their thunder because I want them and Pat Daniel, the section chief, to be able to talk, but we have a lot going on in recycling. Obviously, there were some conversations in the Indiana General Assembly that certainly Representative Shively is aware of. I think She's the only legislator on the call so far. So Representative, we really appreciate all of your work and everything that you do to advance the work of our agency and specifically our recycling efforts. We just completed and are in the process of wrapping up contracts on our community recycling grants. So you'll hear a little bit about that. We've got great partnerships with the Indiana Recycling Coalition. I talk with Allison Mitchell often, and Deanna Gardner probably talks to her 2 or 3 times a week. So I would say our relationship with IRC is better than ever. And, you know, the work that Tom and Deanna and Allison and Kristen all do with recycling and IRC is important, and we want to certainly maintain that effort. We just completed our application process for the Governor's Awards for Environmental Excellence. We're in the process of evaluating those applications for 7 different categories that will be honored at our Partners for Pollution Prevention Conference in September. And we do have nominees in all 7 award categories. So if you are looking for an opportunity, we're planning that to be a live in-person event. So we're just beginning the process of getting word out about our conference in September. But we'd love to have all of you attend and be able to witness firsthand those Governor's Awards being presented, but also all the great work that our pollution prevention folks are doing inside the agency and outside the agency with our partnerships. So a lot of things happening there. And then we have been putting together this year in 2021 a series of E101s on various topics. We've done a couple on environmental spills and accidents and remembering to call the spill line. We have done some other outreach efforts with air, land, and water. And we have a whole series of programs planned for the balance of the year. But our most current event coming up will be on May 19th. And we have partnered with US EPA Region 5 in Chicago. And they will be presenting a TRI, Toxic Release Inventory update. And Jennifer Collins also will be talking about how TRI and pollution prevention work together. And so we're excited that we're going to be able to bring that to anyone that would want to participate. If you want to learn more about that, we can get you directed to our website. It's a free registration. It's doesn't cost you anything to attend except your time, and hopefully it would be a good opportunity for many of you to participate. So I think that's the balance of my report at this time. I really want to yield the balance of my time to Pat Daniel, the section chief for our recycling and quality assurance programs and our environmental education. We've been doing a lot of work on Earth Day this year. And so even virtually, we've been able to really make the mark. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn it over to Pat Daniel. I think she's sharing her screen so you can kind of see our layout of that particular section within IDEM. And if you have any questions, I'd be glad to entertain those. So thank you to the legislators. I see several have joined. We really appreciate your leadership in state government and the work you do in the legislative branch. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Wickard. And good morning, Pat.
Good morning. How are you?
Good.
Good morning, board. I don't often get to address the board, but I'm excited to go ahead and introduce a lot of our recycling staff to those of you that are new, and even to some of those of you that have been around a while, just to remind you of all that they do within the section as well as some new faces that we have. I'm excited that for the first time since I've been section chief over recycling, we have a full staff, and we are taking the opportunity to expand the local, state, and nationwide recycling initiatives that are going on around the country to be involved in and participate in. And it's pretty exciting. We're staying on top of a lot of things that's going on and able to actually be involved and sit on commissions and on boards and provide expertise and gain a lot more knowledge. So it's really exciting. As Julia mentioned, I'm the section chief over recycling, education, and quality assurance. So recycling is just one of the programs that I manage. I'm also over all of our education and outreach for the agency, as well as our quality assurance, quality management system for data gathering analysis that we do for the agency. But recycling, I have the biggest staff, of course, is in recycling. So we're going to start with Deanna. Most of you know Deanna and have interacted with Deanna. She's the RMDP, the manager for the Recycling Market Development Program, but she's also one of the top person in the branch that acts as a lead to stay on top of recycling initiatives around the country. Deanna?
Hi, Pat. Thanks for the introduction. Yeah, since this is the Recycling Market Development Board meeting and I'm the Recycling Market Development Program Manager, hopefully I don't have too much to share about my responsibilities and roles, but I just have to say I'm thankful. I've been in the recycling world for quite a bit of time now. I'm thrilled at the way that we've been able to progress recycling within the state. And looking forward to the things that are moving forward on the horizon for Indiana. I'll share some of the recent participation that I've had in just a little bit after our update on the community recycling program. But yeah, thanks. I'm always happy to work with the board. You guys are a great bunch of people and look forward to what we can do in the future as well.
Thanks, Deanna.
Yeah.
I have never found anyone that's as passionate about recycling as Deanna. Trust me, she is very, very much engaged in recycling and a great proponent of recycling. Next person I want to introduce to you is Tom. Most of you know Tom. You've dealt with Tom. Those of you that are new to the board, Tom is our data person. If there's anything you need to know pretty much about how a process works or any of the reporting data that we receive, Tom is your go-to person. Tom, did you want to share something?
Right. Oh yeah, the recycling area is certainly evolving, and I got involved coming back in the 90s and with energy inputs and strong background in energy as well as recycling, engineering, chemical engineering discipline. But the data is very important, you know, being able to track progress. And I know earlier times we had a 50% recycling goal and, you know, intentions were good. There was no good way to track if we were reaching that goal. It was, the data wasn't there, you know, the collection wasn't implemented, and those numbers are feedback to people doing the work, and they have a message that go with them. And so when you can track the numbers, then obviously you can manage the programs, and that allows you to move forward. And so the momentum is really very timely. We're at a good spot right now as the country moves towards recycling, and recycling is needed. And it is, as you see the circular economy being implemented, and you see long-term goals where we want to be as a country, you know, and moving towards renewable energy, recycling is a part of that, mainly because it's more efficient operations. And when you do recycling, it reduces waste and it improves efficiency. And that's what we need as a circular economy, as well as trying to achieve net zero carbon emissions, you know, middle of the century. But all these efforts go with the data, and that discipline is always evolving and keeps you thinking and makes your head go in circles sometimes trying to know how to track the data. And it's done locally, statewide, and on a national basis. So what we're doing here is very important. We fund projects and to support the recycling efforts into the state. And we got good companies that do the work, and we want to share that message, as well as the board. You know, the board people provide that input too, and selecting projects, and your backgrounds are very important. So yeah, that's what I got.
Thank you, Tom. The next person I want to introduce you to is Allison Taylor. Allison started with us a few years ago, and she was the Recycling Education and Outreach staff person. She was also our liaison to the solid waste management districts. When we were authorized to restart the community recycling grant program, Allison became the manager of that program and reinvigorated that as well. Allison?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Yeah, Pat kind of stole my thunder there.
I'm sorry.
I have been with, you're fine. I've been with IDEM for 3 years now, which is pretty crazy to think about. But when I started, I was very much on the education and outreach side for recycling, both internally and externally. And then once I got my footing in that area, I kind of had the capacity to expand a bit more. And we had the opportunity to launch this new grant program, the Community Recycling Grant Program, in 2019. So since then, I've been really focused on that program for the past couple of years.
Thanks, Allison. Allison has done a great job of getting that program up and running, which works in conjunction with the grant programs that you guys award as well. So it's nice that we're able to do that and help a lot of the solid waste management districts, the nonprofits, the schools, those sorts of operations. So it's been great having her on staff. The newest person is Kristen. As many of you know, Jacob resigned the end of last year and moved on. And Kristen is the newest person, and she is our e-waste manager program. Kristen was already with the agency, and she was promoted into this program, to this position. And we are definitely excited to have her on board. She has some great ideas on moving the e-waste program forward. And I think you will find her very enjoyable to work with as well. Kristen?
Hi, yes, thank you so much, Pat. Like she said, my name is Kristen Kesters. I have been with IDEM for a year now. I started off in this program in OPS, and I worked my way up into becoming the electronic waste manager. While working here, I developed a lot of my passions from learning all the programs that we offer, and electronic waste is something that really became a passion of mine, and especially with everything going on in the virtual world that we're starting to live in, we've all seen that electronics and technology is just growing and growing. So I'm really excited to get my foot in the door here and to meet all of you and to grab on as we start to grow and develop in technology. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks, Kristen. The other person I want to introduce you to is the next person is Cameron. Cameron also has joined us within the last couple of years as working on the e-waste program. And he concentrates mostly on compliance assistance to the collectors and the recyclers. Cam?
Yeah, thanks, Pat. Like Pat said, I work on the e-waste program, first with Jacob and now with Kristen, focusing mainly on the collectors and recyclers. We're also, with Kristen, organizing an e-waste collection event that'll take place in June at the Indiana Government Center. So excited about that. We're promoting that. So feel welcome to come down on June 18th or 19th and dispose of some e-waste, partnering with tech recyclers on that. And then I've also been working with Allison and Deanna on the community recycling grants and now this program as well. So thanks for having me.
Thanks, Cameron. And there's one other person I'd like to mention. He's not part of the recycling section per se, but he does assist us a lot with guidance as well as our any legal questions that we have. He oversees a lot of our contracts once grants are awarded, and that's James French. James, did you want to say anything? I know he's addressed the board before, but we really depend on his guidance and expertise, and he's a great help to the recycling team.
Thank you very much, Pat. Yep, my name is James. If you need any questions about any of the legal issues that we have, any of the contract issues, any of the ethical issues, please feel free to come to me. Most of you already know me, but my email is jfrench@idem.in.gov.
Thanks, James. And like I said, we have a full team. We have a great team. We have passionate people who are very excited about the programs they work on. So if you have questions or you need any information outside of even RMDB, we have people on staff that is very good about getting back with you and outreach and learning and sharing all of that information. So thank you. We appreciate the support. Thanks, Julia.
And I would just be remiss if I didn't thank Pat. She kind of keeps the ship moving in the right direction and manages a lot of programs in addition to our recycling efforts. And so she's assembled a great team that she's empowered to get the job done. And so, Pat, thank you for your leadership at IDEM over the years. And I can tell you, I'm extremely proud and honored to work with all of these individuals that have been introduced to you. So thank you, Pat, and we'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Chairman.
Pat, I also would like to thank you, and I certainly appreciate everything that you do in keeping me on the straight and narrow as I muddle through these meetings. But it's a pleasure working with you, and it appears that you've assembled a great team. So thank you very much. If I look at the agenda, now we're going to have a status of update on the existing grants by Ms. Gardner.
Yep, and I forgot to, actually, we're still in the item update mode. We have a few bullet points. So we're gonna move back a little bit. We did the item recycling staff overview. And now I'm gonna ask Allison Taylor actually to talk a little bit more in depth about the community recycling grant program. As she mentioned, it was launched in 2019 and we're really proud of what we've accomplished so far. And I think since it complements what the recycling market development grants are doing, that it will be helpful to hear a little bit about the progress on those grants. Allison, you should be able to share your screen.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me take a minute to get that screen up. So like Deanna said, we have these two grant programs and they really complement each other. So that's why I wanted to take a minute just to make sure that we introduce the community recycling grant program in relation to RMDP. I think at this point, most people are aware it exists, but maybe don't know how they exactly work together. So Deanna and I do work very closely together, of course, to make sure that they are working in tandem, not in isolation. You know, they complement each other is, I think, exactly the right term. So with this slide, I am definitely preaching to the choir here. We all know that IDEM has a role in solid waste and recycling. And part of that responsibility is the establishment of our two programs, recycling market development and community recycling grant programs. But just a reminder, we have this little graphic of where that funding comes from. There's a solid waste management fee, which is that 50 cent per ton surcharge at final disposal facilities. And that gets evenly split into our two funds, recycling promotion and assistance fund, solid waste management fund. So SWMF is where the money comes from for CRGP, and then RPAF goes to RMDP. So a lot of acronyms involved, but that is the basis for the two programs. So the community recycling grant program was established back in, going forwards. here we go. Established back in 2019 with the aim of increasing recycling through new or expanded projects amongst communities for a couple of different things. We have education and promotion of recycling, processing of recyclable materials, waste reduction, and then also HHW and organics management. So the people that are eligible under this program are solid waste management districts, counties, municipalities, schools, and nonprofit organizations. And as it stands, the grant amounts for this program range from $500,000 to $200,000. That seems to fluctuate a little bit every year, but that's how it is right now. So under this program, there is a 50% match required, and that can be broken down into 25% of direct cash expenditures, and the other 25% may be in kind, such as donated goods or services. So that is kind of a quick overview of what the Community Recycling Grant Program is all about. Again, it was established in 2019, kind of with the aim, in part at least, to be able to allow RMDP to get back to sort of its prime directive of market development, I think, because RMDP was the only grant program around for a good number of years. It had kind of blossomed or expanded to take on more projects or more types of projects than what it was originally intended for. So that's why we wanted to bring back and have two separate programs to kind of fulfill different project types. So I did create this little chart just to give a quick overview of kind of the differences between the two programs. So as far as eligibility, the big difference there is that for-profit businesses are eligible under RMDP and not under CRGP. So CRGP is just for schools, nonprofits, cities and towns, and solid waste districts. Right now, the match requirement is the same under each program, 50%, but CRGP does allow for a few other types of match to be included in that. So that's the in-kind types of expenses, such as personnel time or donated things. So that allows a little more flexibility for those organizations that are on a tighter budget. Grant amount, again, I think this changes just about every round, but right now for RMDP, it's $10,000 to $500,000, and CRGP is $500,000 up to $100,000. I haven't had anybody just yet go all the way up to $100,000, but it's there if they need it. And available funding, we typically expect the $2 million for RMDP and $500,000 for CRGP. That's at least what it was in the past. Types of projects is kind of the biggest gray area. Right now, there's not like a hard dividing line between what types of projects go under each program. I think our expectation is that over the years, there will be sort of a natural divergence. And of course, the biggest kind of influencing factor is just the scale of those grants. If you're needing on the scale of $500,000, you got to go over to RMDP for that. So yes, I think RMDP, of course, is about market development. It's about the economic and kind of infrastructure influence, whereas CRGP, the impact is going to be felt on probably a more localized level towards the directly towards the organization itself or its immediate community. And then the award format for those two programs, of course, RMDP grants are awarded through the board. And then for CRGP, that is our internal review committee. Most of the item staff on this call today are on that review committee, and we kind of select people out of IDEM every year just based on their expertise. So we make sure we get a good holistic viewpoint of the types of projects that are that we receive as applications. So we've had 2 rounds now. We just made our most recent awards at the end of March. So out of those 2 years, in 2020, we awarded just over $500,000 actually to 34 different projects with an average award amount of $15,000. And those 34 projects went to organizations across 30 different counties. So that's kind of cool. And then in 2021, so just this past March, we awarded $444,000 to 21 different projects, which is definitely fewer projects, but the reason for that is that our average award went up to $21,000 because we did bump up the max grant amount from $50,000 to $100,000. And all of those 21 projects are in 21 separate counties. So I love to see that. I like to see the funding go dispersed across the state. And kind of interestingly, we had 4 repeat grantees. So 4 of those people from 2020 came right back and got money for another new or expanded project. So I think that's wonderful. So out of those 2 years, we had just under $1 million awarded, and many more years to come to tack on to that, hopefully. So this map over here, I don't have one for 2021 just yet, but this is the 2020 grants. So you can see we have a really wide reach throughout the state. It kind of breaks it down into some rough categories of the types of projects we funded, which I'll get into a little bit more here. So when I'm looking at who are we funding through this program, because that's something we kind of consider is who are we reaching between the 2 different programs? Are we missing out on anybody? Are we, overrepresenting any one group? So when I look at the 2020 year, we had out of those 34 projects, 17 were solid waste districts, 6 were schools, 6 were towns or municipalities, and 5 were nonprofits. And then that breakdown is very similar here in this 2021 round. We had 13 solid waste districts, 3 schools, 3 towns or municipalities, and 3 nonprofits. So in both years, it was roughly 50% going towards the districts, and then the remaining was split evenly between the other entity types. So I think that makes a lot of sense in the sense that I work very closely with districts. They're probably the most aware of these programs. But I also, when I think about, there's something along the lines of 70 solid waste district versus hundreds or thousands of schools, nonprofits, towns and municipalities. That's on my mind to do more outreach to those other organization types to make sure that they are aware of this funding and can take advantage of that as well. So as far as the project types, things were a little, things changed up a little bit more in this category. So in 2020, we had 14 of those 34 projects that were going towards recycling bins. And these are very rough categories. Of course, many projects are doing more than one thing, but just to put a label on it, 14 were going towards recycling bins, 10 were going towards education and outreach projects, 9 equipment projects, and then 1 was a recycled content purchase project. And then in 2021, we had 10 projects going towards equipment, 2 going towards compost, 3 going towards special collection or community events, 3 education outreach projects, and 3 for recycling bins. So that's kind of an interesting growth there. I think it's exciting to see more kind of leveling up from this recycling bins. Of course, recycling bins are important, valid project, but to take it one step further and go on towards more equipment or other things, I think that's good to see as well. Okay, so of course, we now have had 55 projects already, which is amazing. And those are all really exciting, wonderful projects. I just wanted to call out just a couple of them with my last couple of minutes, just to give you an idea of what exactly people are doing. So these are from this most recent round in 2021. So these projects are in the midst of getting their legal agreement executed right now and will be happening over the next year. So we're really looking forward to seeing the results of these. So our first project here is Pilot Ed School, which is located here in Indianapolis. They actually have a couple different locations in different states. I think it's like a special charter school. But they had an award of just about $10,000 to do a special composting program at their school. So the person heading this project is their environmental art teacher, which I think is just the coolest job title ever. I wish that I were an environmental art teacher. But they are doing a special composting system. It's called bokashi composting, which I guess is an anaerobic form of breakdown. So they're really fermenting their food to be able to take on pretty much all of their cafeteria food waste, including meat and dairy. And then that's going to be an education project, of course, to manage that kind of community garden and hopefully grow some food out of it, out of the byproduct. So I love that. Then we have Hendricks County Recycling District. So they were awarded $64,000 And this is just a small part of their actual overall budget to open up a whole new staffed recycling center. So a big part of the reason for this was that they had illegal dumping going on at the existing drop-off site. So that's what these pictures are, not the future. This is the illegal dumping happening. So they're using that money to fund some of the costs such as security cameras, fencing, and attendant building. So that's a really exciting project to have, an entirely new staff center. And then lastly, we have one going towards Sustain IU, of course, in Bloomington, kind of the Office of Sustainability out of IU. So they have our largest award this year. It's just under $80,000. And that project is really to update the recycling in their residence halls primarily. So they're going to have recycling bins in every single dorm room, and recycling and trash bins. So that's what this picture is of, just these two little bins, as well as larger collection sites in the main areas. So part of that is going to be updating the signage so it's more, excuse me, up to date and accurate for kind of the behavior change they're wanting to see. And they're definitely going to have students involved doing waste audits and training kind of some green leaders to make sure that this recycling project is implemented successfully for ongoing students throughout the years. So that's another cool one. So those are just 3 of the projects that I wanted to call out. Again, we have 21 from this year, 34 from the past year, some of which are closed out now, some of which are still ongoing. So a lot going on. Very excited to see where we go in the next few years. So thank you so much for listening to me, allowing me to have this opportunity to speak about the program. I'm very passionate about it. I think it's a really great opportunity for us to influence recycling in Indiana. And I think capture some people who would not otherwise be interested in recycling. So please let me know if you have any questions. I'm always available to chat about this program or anything related.
Ms. Taylor, thank you very much. What is the timing on the application process and then the award timing? Because I know
Great question.
From our
Yes.
program.
Yeah, so in a typical year, it should be September through October for applications and then awarding them in December. This past year, because of COVID, we were delayed and made those awards in March. But yes, our anticipated timeline for the next round is September, October application period.
Thank you. Any other questions for Ms. Taylor? Well, I thank you very much. You're doing great work, and
I think Terry has a question.
All right, Deanna, do we have another item?
Bruce, Terry Guerin has a question for Allison. It looks like he has his hand raised.
Yes, thank you. I'm really pleased to see this program established because, at least from my perspective, we were conflicted every year in making sure that the money was kind of distributed equitably. And some of us, including me, would like to see the bulk of our monies go to infrastructure kinds of projects. And at the same time, we were having applications, educational applications from, schools and applications in solid waste districts, so what have you, for bans. So I'm assuming that with the establishment of your grants program, we will see a lot less of those kinds of applications coming to the Recycle Market Development Board. And I guess one of the questions I have is there cooperation between you and Deanna to make sure that these applications that are made are funneled to the appropriate program? Some of these performer ones, I guess, is what I'm saying, I don't think should come to the Recycle Market Development Board anymore. They need to come to your program, Allison.
Absolutely. Yes, we absolutely work to make sure that those applications get funneled to the correct person. And hopefully we catch people before they even start writing their application. We can let them know which program is going to be most appropriate for them. There is still some gray area, but like you're saying, we definitely want to capture those smaller like school projects, people who are just looking to pick up a couple recycling bins. Those types of projects can definitely come over to CRGP, and we make sure people are aware of that.
Any other questions?
It looks like Debbie just had one in the chat pop up.
Ms. Hack? Well, I can read Debbie's question. Does the amount of grants correspond with the amount of funds received each year? Both grant areas, can we expect this amount to remain about the same each year?
Yes. I hope. We only have 2 years of data to go off of for CRGP, of course, but for those 2 years, we had $500,000 each year, and that's my hope to see that amount. Yes, each year. And I'm really proud that we did have that $500,000 this past year because of COVID. It was very much in question whether we would be able to have that at all, or if it would need to be a reduced amount. So I'm really thrilled that we were able to offer that full $500,000. And yes, I do hope to see that going forward.
And I did read a list of the grant recipients, and it seemed as if you got very thorough coverage from north to south, east and west in the state. So I commend you for your efforts, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity.
Good. Anyone else? With that, I guess it's Deanna. We're going to go over the Circular Economy Accelerator program.
Yes. I just wanted to also take a moment about to share some opportunity that I've had in the last about 4 months, and share with you kind of how Indiana has been involved with recycling. Just a moment. Before we get started on that, I did see that Pat did have her hand raised. Pat, did you want to make a comment? Real quick?
No, that's fine.
Okay.
That's okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So moving forward on the Circular Economy Accelerator, this is an initiative that has been put forth by the Recycling Partnership. Hopefully most of you are somewhat familiar with them. They're a national organization that is really putting efforts into capturing recyclables that are going to the waste stream. I'm going to share my screen that has this kind of infographic about this latest initiative, but they are partnering with many industry partners across the nation to really move recycling as it plays with the circular economy forward. And they have come up with a policy initiative that they are looking to push both on a state level as well as a national level. Excuse me. So here we have the infographic. I'm going to actually scroll down real quick and show you some of these industry partners that they are working with. So they met first with this group and came up with a policy initiative. You can go, there's a website at the bottom here, or the recyclingpartnership.org, and search for their accelerator policy to get all the complete details. But you'll notice that some of these industry partners are focused here in Indiana. So they do have an interest here in our state. How I've become involved is they have asked me a few months back to be part of the public sector advisory group. So they put together representatives from many different public sectors based on county, city, states, municipalities, as well as on the state level, to take a real dive into their policy proposals and get that opinion, not just from the industry level, but also from that public sector level. So I have been meeting about monthly or every other month with the Recycling Partnership. And then actually was asked after we finished our kind of deep dive, I was part of a group of 4 people from our public sector advisory group, representatives from Seattle, Texas, Indiana, as well as New York, to present our findings to the larger Circular Economy Accelerator members. And then this will be part of a white paper that will also can be found on the Circular Economy website, the Recycling Partnerships website. That white paper is not finalized yet. It's still in draft version, so I didn't want to share those findings quite yet. But basically what I wanted to share this proposal, because it does sound like, and maybe I saw Allison Mitchell, at least she was on earlier, can speak about this if she wants to. No pressure. But hopefully it sounds like there will be policy by the Recycling Partnership in partnership with a local policy group in the upcoming years along these lines. So the policy proposal is 2-pronged. There'll be a packaging and printed paper fee, and that will help fund infrastructure investment as well as consistent education and outreach across the program. But they're also recognize that municipalities are really struggling to handle those costs of the recycling operations. Right now, they're sole responsible for that aspect of the trash and recycling materials. And so to be able to offset their costs, there will also be a disposal surcharge fee involved. Yeah, Indiana does have a disposal surcharge fee, the 50 cent that half of that goes to the Recycling Market Development Board. I believe that they will look at that and think about what is needed. There will be needs assessment involved with this policy and come up with what is a fair disposal surcharge fee that would help to cover recycling operations within the state. So I just wanted to bring that up as something, just because I've been involved with it, is something that directly influences and impacts Indiana, and share with you kind of, it's an exciting time, I think, for recycling in Indiana. This would really be a game changer in how we look at recycling infrastructure and how we make it sustainable in the future. Because right now, or I think many of you are aware, there's costs to recycling that are just, we are struggling to find the means to accommodate those costs and keep up with those costs. I am open to any questions. Allison, if you wanted to make some additional comments on it as well, go ahead. She does have her hand raised. So Allison, go ahead.
Thanks, Deanna. Yeah, we've been in discussion with the Recycling Partnership on this for a couple of years now, and we're excited to be working with them to bring this to the this policy proposal to the Indiana legislature in the 2022 session. The one thing I just want to note about that disposal surcharge is that the state of Indiana has the 6th lowest landfill tipping fee in the country, and that is actually we are the lowest in the Midwest for landfill tipping fees. So that's a race to the bottom and an opportunity for increased revenue that could directly benefit infrastructure investments for recycling in the state of Indiana. So
thanks, Allison.
Deanna, I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, in my line of work, when you start talking about raising tipping fees and surcharges, if you will, I'm curious, what is the balance we currently have in the recycling fund? And is it not sufficient to cover a lot of the initiatives without the increase of the tipping fee?
Those are all legitimate questions. And I think that would be looked at when this policy gets discussed in more depth. you know, I think that it would vary by state too when they propose, you know, a disposal surcharge. These are big, broad outline suggestions. Obviously, there needs to be a lot of questions answered still, and that's one of them. Our program, we did give that update last year. I believe we're in the Recycling Promotion Assistance Fund has a balance of, I don't have it in front of me. I want to say it's around 10 million. But what needs to be done as well is a analysis, a needs assessment of what is needed to help supplement operation costs for municipalities and counties throughout. I will say, I think that what the Recycling Market Development Board has done to fund this recycling infrastructure study will help inform that as well. So I'm excited that we are going to have that study coming out soon to show where things are, because we don't really know at this stage what cities and towns are doing, what programs are they offering when it comes to recycling. Have they stopped their recycling programs due to not having the funds to be able to operate funds? I just talked to someone yesterday who says, points out to cities in their county that don't provide any kind of waste or recycling services. They leave it to the private haulers. So there needs to be a lot of information gathered still, I think, is what I can tell those in the recycling and waste reduction industry as far as that disposal surcharge goes.
I hope that through our education liaison that we inform the public that there is a cost to recycle. It will be collected at the disposal facilities and passed through to the initiatives. But the people have this false sense of free recycling, and there is a cost associated with it. I'm sure Mr. Guerin has some comments as well along this side, but we have to make sure that the people understand we're making an investment in the future, and each and every one of us has to contribute. And there is a dedicated amount going towards that initiative. Terry, do you have any comments?
Yes, I would totally concur with everything you just said, Bruce. I've always taken the position that people many times say they support recycling, they'll pay for recycling, but when the rubber hits the road, they don't want to pay for it. But as Bruce said, there is a cost to everything, and I firmly believe that if individuals want recycling, they should have some stake in the game. I mean, they should be willing to step up to the plate and help pay for it. And some of these grants that have come before our board, and some of them I couldn't vote on because I had a conflict of interest. I just had to sit there and keep quiet. But my concern is a lot of these grant proposals is there some sustainability to what they're wanting to do. And in some of these cases, I just didn't see where the sustainability was there. Let me ask Allison, if I may. I know you have a circular economy initiative within the city of Indianapolis, and I'm not sure, Deanna, what your relationship is with that initiative in Indianapolis. But Allison, you've been looking at having the city increase its solid waste fee, which hasn't been increased for many, many years. Are you looking at, if that endeavor does not work out for you, what's your alternatives?
It's a multi-pronged initiative that's got started with our work in Indianapolis to remedy the city of Indianapolis's challenges related to recycling. But it is also statewide, in that many of the partners in the initiative that are interested in the materials the recyclable materials that are in Indianapolis that are currently not being diverted to recyclers want those materials, and they're located outside of Indianapolis. So it's kind of a two initiatives in one, if you will. We are working to improve funding for recycling infrastructure at the state level. And that's what I mentioned before when Deanna brought up the Circular Economy Accelerator with the recycling partnership. So we're working at the state level on policy to support more funding for infrastructure for recycling. And meanwhile, working with the city of Indianapolis to educate its elected officials on the current situation, the challenges, and possible paths forward to increase funding so they can improve the infrastructure and the more equitable access to recycling services that the city currently does not provide. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Not really. I guess I'm interested in how are you situated now, and I know this becomes a political issue, in trying to raise that fee with the city of Indianapolis. That sometimes is politically difficult because the mayors of cities usually do not want to increase fees on its citizens. So what are you, if that doesn't work out for you, are you looking at this statewide initiative to get money for helping recycling in Indianapolis, or exactly what are you looking at?
Well, frankly, Terry, the mayor of the city of Indianapolis has committed to improving recycling through the Thrive Indianapolis plan. They've committed to providing comprehensive curbside recycling to all of its residents by 2025 when all of the contracts expire, and that includes Covanta. So there's the effort to help the city is really helping the city achieve its own goals. So I guess the path for, if we don't succeed, the city is going to have to figure out how to succeed. It's not a matter of if they will succeed. It's a strategy for how they will succeed.
Okay. I guess my bottom line is we're sitting here every year trying to get 1 million, hopefully 2 million, to award these grants for infrastructure, which is one of the things you'd like to see happen. And rather than going back and looking at increasing the 50 cents per ton, maybe the legislature ought to give more money to the recycling market development program so that we can do more in the area of infrastructure. So we'd like to work with you, Deanna. I mean, the solid waste industry would like to work with you, and you too, Allison. But we also, and I think Bruce will agree with me, the solid waste industry is always the cash cow in just about every state I've ever worked in. And we don't mind stepping up to the plate. But as Bruce says, if there's a cost to us, it's going to be passed on to the citizens in most cases. So I hope we can work together to resolve the issue, especially the city of Indianapolis. And I hope we can work together to do that.
In my request, simply that any cost increase and pass-throughs and be communicated to the residents of the state of Indiana as an effort to institute and I guess support all the recycling initiatives that we take on. I don't think we give recycling enough focus currently with the fees that we collect, and any additional fees. I think we need to, just be honest with the people that there is a cost associated with keeping our world sustainable. And it's a great investment that we have to make, but at least they need to be aware of that. Mr. Lutz, do you have any comments in that regard?
Thank you, Bruce. Yes, there's a lot of comments. There's a lot of uncertainty. And, you know, bottom line, I think the sustainable for any programs, if they, to be sustainable, they have to self-support. And I 100% agree with all that. I do believe that we want to drive good habits. We want to drive clean habits. We want to drive self-sustaining habits for all programs in any models that we have. I want more, personally, on a public standpoint, more recyclables in our facilities, as well as the Rumpke facilities, as well as all, is good for all, is good for the economy, is good for business. It's just, I think it's important that these programs have the self-sustainings to last, the durabilities of the long haul. If we're trying to support any type of a business model through another business model, then I'm not sure if that is the right business model on a cash flow standpoint, is kind of where I'm getting at. And I don't want to confuse things too much, but that's my take. And I think industry, manufacturers, need to have skin in the game to ensure that the products that they produce, one, have a recyclable value in the market, as well as getting funds and getting appreciation and getting dollars for using recyclable material in the products that they produce as well. So, you know, there's skin in the game that way too. And I know that there's a lot of legislative out there as well. You know, working just here, you know, our experience in Indianapolis with March Madness and our partners with Coca-Cola, there's a big effort that Coca-Cola has, and we did a lot of good things there. But I think imploring the industry more in that side is good, when we can say is, hey, they get benefit, they get kickback, they get maybe tax reductions if they use more, their raw material comes from recyclable material than it is from virgin material too, so.
It's a very good point. I guess to wrap it up, Allison and Deanna, as we move forward.
Okay,
Oh,
Debbie does have a question. I just wanted to make sure you get a chance for, Debbie's been waiting patiently with her hand raised.
Well, I apologize because I can't. However, I have my screen set up. I can't see hands raised.
Okay.
Ms. Hackman, go ahead.
I just, there's a couple of points I just want to agree with Bruce and Terry, and it might have something to do with the color of our hair. We've been around a while. But you got to understand that the landfills in Indiana are also supporting all of the solid waste districts in their county. So we want to be real careful not to bite the hand that feeds us, because they're already supporting one program. And again, looking back over probably 20 years ago, when we had recycle funds that were available, and those funds ceased to exist in 2008. And I feel personally part of that reason is they were abused. And I know that's our responsibility as a board to make sure that doesn't happen. But there was so much money out there, and they were giving out so many grants that people were getting grants that they really didn't need. You know, people were buying trucks, they were buying glass crushers, they were buying balers that they really didn't need. So I think it's very important, not just to say that we're going to give money to people to improve recycling, but that we as a board be very, very careful who gets that money and what they use it for. You know, just because we don't need 3 counties in a row with horizontal balers if they're only going to be using them 3 days a week. So I think we can, that we don't need so much money. We just need to make sure that the money that we have is spent very, very wisely.
Thank you, Debbie, and I appreciate your comments. Mr. Guerin?
Yes, one just final quick comment. This circular economy is not an isolated endeavor. I mean, there are other things going on nationally that kind of tie into this, and I'm talking primarily about producer responsibility. New York is very heavily involved with this. The National Waste and Recycling Association is very heavily involved with this issue. And all of these industries that are supporting this circular economy, I hope they are mindful of their own responsibilities as far as producer responsibility is concerned, because that is being looked at nationally also as a funding mechanism.
So I guess I can wrap it up with regard to the industry representatives that we support the circular economy wholeheartedly. We know it's the right thing to do for our environment, but we just hope that we spend more of an effort educating the community that it does come at a cost. And it's an investment on their part, on each and every person's part to obtain that goal. And with the help of Representative Arrington and Senator Barrow, I hope we get that message through to state legislature. And, as I say, we will support whatever it takes to get the job done, but we want to be very selective with regard to fees, because it will be a pass through to all of the, disposal customers coming into the landfills throughout the state. Okay, any other comments? Well, I think now, Deanna, we're up to your status updates of existing grants. Are we not?
All right. Yes, we are, Bruce. Thank you. I just want to spend just a quick minute on this. We do have a couple other presentations coming up, so I want to give them the time to fully do theirs. Status of dates, existing grants, excuse me. Fiscal year 20, we just have 2 grants that had extended execution dates. So Growing Green is ongoing for another year, and CW Recycling grant was an 18-month grant, so theirs is not completed. Everything else has been completed and closed for fiscal year 20. Fiscal year 21 that we awarded last year is going smoothly. We are right up at a 6 months mark for the first executed grant, so I'll be expecting a progress report from them. And all the rest have been executed. We are working on 2 amendments to those grants, so a couple of them are kind of on hold until we get those amendments pushed through. And that should be it for the existing grants. I do want to go ahead and move on to our next bullet point. So I will go ahead and introduce it. As you know, we have sponsored the Recycling Infrastructure and Economic Impact Study for the state, and Dan is with us again to provide some additional updates from when you guys heard from him in February.
Good morning. I'm Dan Grader with GT Environmental, and it's a pleasure to be here today to give you an update on where we're at with the project. Deanna, did you want me to share my screen, or are you gonna?
Yeah, why don't you go? I gave you
Okay.
permission, so you should be able to share your screen.
Can everybody see that?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. Okay, so, well, first of all, I want to say that, my presentation is fitting in real nicely with all that was just talked about, because, as part of putting the final report together, I've been working on the recommendations, and I can tell you that almost everything that everybody said is tucked into some piece of a recommendation that we're going to provide. And there's additional ones as well. And so really, for me, the most exciting part of this project is that particular piece where we're putting together kind of a top-down approach to recommendations to help, the state of Indiana move towards increasing recycling, the circular economy, the whole sustainability future that that all of us are striving for. So so that's a cool part of the report. But let me go ahead and kind of walk through some of this. This is gonna be a brief presentation. Again, we're working on the report now. So I'm gonna show you some maps. We're gonna talk a little bit about the economic study and then finalize with the timeline. So, and the maps, we're gonna show you a curbside recycling map, a disposal facility map, and then there's additional maps that are part of the report, but I just wanted to show these at this time. Okay, so this is the curbside recycling in Indiana map. So, you know, if you look at the legend, it shows you who has curbside recycling in Indiana. So we identify, you know, whether it's a private hauler or a public hauler. What I will say, and of course we're going to have some analysis of the infrastructure review, but this map, one of the things I want to mention is when we say it's curbside recycling, it's a combination of what we call subscription and non-subscription. So the subscription's the curbside recycling where a customer has to pay an additional fee. Typically you have lower participation in those types of programs. And then there's the other programs that are non-subscription that are just bundled into the curbside program as a total fee and typically have higher participation. So we're going to obviously mention that as part of this map. But what this map shows is, you know, who has recycling in the state of Indiana and whether it's a public or private hauler. This particular map, we show disposal facilities in Indiana. So if you look at it, we got the compost facilities with the green star, the landfill, transfer stations, and of course we debated about this, but we thought it was best to have some sort of frame of reference with the highways. So the only detail we're going to show is just the main interstates, and then on some of the maps, like the previous one, we show outlines of these cities in the state as well. Okay, so this one is the recycling drop-off. So everywhere there's a drop-off in the state, and this has been a challenging map to put together, I can tell you. And we're doing a very detailed job. I know Aaron, one of my associates that's working on this, is actually, of course, we did the surveys, and those were very, very helpful. But some of these counties, you know, we're confirming, because you see some that are blank. We're trying to make sure and confirm that if by looking online and so on, if they have drop-offs. So we've been kind of working through this, and so this is where we're at right now. But again, this gives you a feel for where the drop-offs are in the state. Moving on, this is the economic study. So if you'll remember, Indiana University is using the M-Plan model to calculate the economic impact. And this is just one table that they've provided to this point. They're working on the entire piece, which is for each of the recyclables, but this particular one is just for the recycling industry. And I will tell you too, we did, as part of the study, we're comparing this to the ISRI report that was done a couple years ago that also used the M-Plan model as well. And while you can't compare them, you know, exactly, it's difficult to know exactly how they put it together, but in total, they do, what we're doing so far does compare with the ISRI report. And, you know, when you look at these numbers, they're, you know, staggering. I mean, they're big numbers. And the idea is that, you know, the recycling industry, there's 4,000 direct employees, 4,200, and then 4,200 spinoffs, so a total of 8,500 employees related to the recycling industry. And then it shows the compensation that each of those categories receive, and then the value added. You know, for that compensation, you have the multiplier effect. These models are very complex, and we're going to go into, you know, detail into how they, you know, well, not a great detail, but explain more how they work, but also, you know, what are these numbers telling us? So, and then the last line there is the output. So you know, you're looking at some really big numbers. You know, for instance, for the total for recycling, $1.7 billion for the state of Indiana. And again, that number, just to give you an idea, the one for ISRI was 1.717, and we're at 1.737. And again, their study was a couple years ago. So, you know, so those numbers do appear to be reasonable when you compare the two reports. But again, we're going to, you know, again, I wanted to give you a snapshot. We're really busy putting this together. We have, we're going to have a draft to staff, to the IDEM staff, by the 17th of May. And we've been working with IDEM staff through this whole thing. So, and I do really appreciate Pat, Deanna's, and Tom's support working with us on this. It's been a, you know, it's a big project. I think one of the more, and I'll just tell you, one of the more challenging pieces, no surprise, is the data gathering piece. That's a very challenging piece. And so, you know, we're taking all that information that we got, putting together these maps and the infrastructure report. And then on top of that, the economic impact, which is a big part of the report as well. And then ultimately, like I was saying earlier, the recommendations, which again, I think you're going to find, and again, we're working with IDEM on that as well, staff, because I think these recommendations are going to show you, again, what we believe is necessary. You know, if you're going to hit your 50% goal and you're looking at the circular economy, you know, there's a number of things that we recommend that need to happen. So, but anyway, with that, I know it was a quick presentation. We're going to have the report, you know, done by June 1st. So, but I will throw it out. Any questions anybody has? Yes.
Mr. Guerin?
Yes, on the maps that you showed, I did not see any material recovery facilities indicated.
I think that's on a different map. That will be shown.
Okay.
Yeah, these maps are more for you to get a feel for kind of what they're going to look like.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yes. Good question, though.
Dan,
yeah.
Your maps, would it be possible to overlay the county names on the maps eventually?
We can try. The challenge, that's a good question, because it gives a better indication of you know, where you're at and so on. The big challenge we had was making them too busy. But I don't know, Deanna, do you have a comment on the county names at all?
Putting me on the spotlight there.
Oh, sorry. I do. Well, I mean, I guess what I want to say is, not to put you on the spot, but you know, I do agree that's a good point. And we're kind of, you know, challenged between showing too much detail and not enough. So, but anyway,
I think we'll take that consideration as we begin to see these finalized maps in the draft version. And I do, yeah, it's exactly as Dan said, like it's good to have a point of reference to know which counties, you know, may have that missing infrastructure. At the same time, you can kind of see that these maps can easily become pretty busy. And if you had the names of every single county on there, you begin to lose the details of the infrastructure and other information. So we'll see if we can find a solution for that.
Thank you. Any other questions from board members? Any other questions from anyone in the audience? Hearing none, Dan, thank you very much for your update. We appreciate the work you're putting forth and look forward to the final product. What is the deadline on the final product?
well, June 1st is the final report deadline. So what we're going to do is get the draft ready, send it over to IDEM staff. They'll do a detailed review of it. We got meetings planned that week to get together with Deanna, Tom, and Pat and talk about, you know, get input. And then we're going to continue to work up until June 1st to get the final report done.
Just a recommendation on the maps. even if it's just a click of a mouse to do an overlay, it would be much easier to look at the facilities in the counties by doing a quick click and an overlay, rather than looking from one map to the other to try to define which county that we're focusing on. So it would be great if we could come up with a solution with that in that regard.
Okay. Yeah. Again, great point. There's two pieces. I guess there would be an electronic version and then a formal paper. So I guess we got to figure out the formal paper. Obviously, you can't click, but we'll take a look at that. It's a great point. It'd be easy, it'd be a lot more functional if you could do that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Very good.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Appreciate your efforts.
Yeah. Thank you. Let's see. So I have to give it back to you in the slideshow.
Yeah, just stop sharing.
Okay.
I can do it.
I think I got it. I think.
We're good.
Oh, are we good? Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
No.
Technology. There's so many different. There's Zoom, GoToMeeting, Teams. You know.
Yeah, they're all slightly different.
I'm trying to get good at all of them. Yeah. Thank you.
Well, the next topic we have on the agenda is the fiscal year 22 grant round. And final review of the proposed changes, RFP changes, revisions, and timeline. Deanna, do you want to carry the?
Sure. And we did discuss these last in February. I just wanted to bring it up since we have not started the next grant round. Everything was approved as I have shared with you in your board packets, with us clarifying a little bit on the language regarding waste to energy. With further discussion and further thought, I would like to leave it as is, that we do not fund waste to energy projects, because that part is still true. And we need to wait a little bit on what EPA says and defines. They are currently looking at defining chemical recycling, whether it should be included in the measurements for the nation regarding recycling. So we really need to kind of wait and see on that. If we get any projects in that kind of fall into a little bit of that borderline between traditional recycling and some chemical recycling, we can assess those on an as needed basis at this point. Otherwise, I will leave it to you if you guys have any additional comment. Oh, sorry. You had mentioned that bullet point of reviewing the proposed process changes. So I went right into that, but let's take a step back. I just wanted to let you know that we are still waiting final approval on our funding to see if there are any reversions for the item budget year. So we hope to release the fiscal 22 grant round in the next couple of weeks and start that, but the timeline may get moved back. I had hoped originally Monday, but it may be moved back a week or two, just based on waiting on that final approval. And we don't know the final amount for that funding yet either. Is there any comments that questions you guys may have regarding our next fiscal year 22 grant round? And feel free to add anything about the process changes or timeline if you do as well.
Well, I believe we discussed the process changes at the last meeting, and we voted to implement those process changes, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So now we're just relying on Julia to push forth and get that dollar figure finalized.
I am working on it. I've been in conversations with our CFO and the commissioner, just waiting on a final discussion. So I've told Deanna and Pat, and Deanna shared it, hopefully we'll know very shortly. We want to keep things moving forward and not have delays. So we should know soon. So thank you.
And what, remind me, Deanna, the date for the grants middles to start coming in? When was that?
Well, I'd hope to open up the grant round following this meeting was my hope. So Monday, May 10th, but we were looking at a slight delay there, possibly. And then we would give 6 weeks for submissions to come in. So that would be June 21st is 6 weeks from Monday. So again, you know, we have some wiggle room to give or take a week or two. Our next board meeting is in August. We will not have time to do all of the compliance checks, reviews, internal scoring to be able to award in August. So we're looking at awards in the October meeting.
All right. Very good. Any questions from any of the board members? Hearing none. I believe, Deanna, I don't want to jump too far ahead. Are we at the point of discussion of the advanced chemical recycling?
We are, yes, thank you. And I'll take a moment to introduce. I did line up a speaker. We started this discussion in February. We know that Indiana is seeing some advanced chemical recycling processes pop up in our state. And I thought that with the possibility of also seeing more applications for our grant rounds, that it would be good to have the board get a nice general overview of what chemical recycling is, what the process is. And so I've asked Ken Miller, and I'm going to read his bio really quickly before I hand it over to him to provide a presentation on chemical recycling. Ken Miller is a consultant with 34 years of research and sustainability leadership experience in the chemical and plastic industries. From 2009 to 14, Ken was the Senior Director of Sustainability at SABIC. SABIC is globally one of the largest diversified suppliers of chemicals, polymers, engineering thermoplastics, fertilizers, and metals. Ken joined their team in 2009 to launch its global sustainability initiative, where the focus has been on developing sustainable strategy, metrics, and solutions throughout the value chain of its product businesses. Prior to SABIC, Ken was a global product and process engineering general manager for several major product lines at General Electric Plastics. Ken is the author of more than 40 patents, is a certified Six Sigma Black Belt, and has led an award-winning sustainability product design team. Prior to his career at GE Plastics in 1980, Ken investigated bioinorganic catalysts at the Charles F. Kettering Research Laboratory. Ken has a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Xavier University, Cincinnati, Ohio, and a doctorate in chemistry from Indiana University, Bloomington, Indiana. Very impressive credentials. Ken is also a serving IRC board member, and we are happy to have him on our meeting today. Thanks, Ken.
Thanks, Deanna. I'm going to go to share the screen. And let's see here. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thanks for that intro. As you can tell, my background is in chemistry, but I'm going to try to keep this non-chemical largely. If I use some terminology that's not familiar to you, please raise your hand or give me a shout at the end. As Deanna said, she wanted to kind of survey what advanced chemical recycling is all about. So, you know, questions I hope to maybe answer in your mind is, you know, are they really advanced? You know, where are they in their state of development? How they fit into the circular economy? And as you know, in the field of sustainability, we always need to be watching out for whether we're getting doused with greenwashing or whether, you know, we really are dealing with a true extended producer responsibility. I think the answer to all those things is yes. This is a key part of extended producer responsibility, but Hope to illustrate that as we talk today. So don't hesitate to jump in along the way. You're all familiar with the linear economy. We've been embedded in it for about 250 years. We could spend all day talking about it, but I think the key point here is that it produces a lot of waste, and you guys have been dealing with that personally. And those waste are a resource that is being lost. And so a large part of the issue we need to address is waste and recovery of resource and being resource productive. Now, the industry embraced sustainability, recycling, back in the 70s. It started to become a very popular term. I think we put a lot of faith in recycling being able to turn this problem around, and it has to a certain extent. But if you kind of step back and look at it, where we're doing really well on recycling is where we're dealing with compositionally simple materials like aluminum cans, PET bottles, lead batteries, and paper. And we recycle those things in many cases at a molecular level when we deal with aluminum cans. For more complex products like plastics, recycling has struggled. And, after 30 years, we're, as you probably know, at about 9%. So, what are we going to do about that? And I have to say, I really appreciated some of the comments earlier in this discussion about driving accountability and the recognition of the cost of us not dealing with waste very effectively. Cost not only today, but cost especially down the road in the future. So especially with plastics and other complex materials like electronics, we need a better system and tools to be resource productive. The circular economy addresses this in many ways. As you know, the circular economy aims to reduce the amount of materials, particularly finite materials we take and what we waste. But I think one of the key insights about it is it splits consumption into consumption and use. So there are those things that we consume that we can regenerate, and that would include, food, energy, and even chemicals for that matter. And then there are those things where we're extracting finite resources. And there we have to think about ourselves as being users, not consumers, and that we're going to recover and restore these materials and keep them in continuous use. So circular economy obviously drives to have continuous use of our natural resources. Now it's more simple. It's not as simple as one loop. If we just focus on the right side, and these are things that are made from finite materials, things we extract. You hear a lot of talk today about how we need to reduce consumption, particularly of disposables, how we really have to put a lot of attention on reuse. And these are key elements of the circular economy. And this is certainly the case because the maximum value is preserved by reducing and reusing, and we avoid the environmental burden associated with making things. So those are obviously key. The problem is, of course, that there are just a lot of materials that recycling is essential because those products, after we use them, are no longer useful. And the yogurt tub is a great example of that. It's a fantastic product, but unfortunately, as soon as we're done with it, we kind of struggle to decide what to do with it and keep its value and keep it out of a landfill where it'll be there for thousands of years. So recycling is essential, and the circular economy can't really fly unless we can walk effectively with recycling. Now with plastics, you've probably seen the numbers, about 90% is still going to waste, and waste includes either landfill or incineration. And about 9% is recycled, and it's generally downcycled. And it usually only goes one more cycle. And that's not the intent of the circular economy. We want to have more of a continuous loop. So we're not doing very well with plastics at all. Oops, sorry. And the petrochemical industry is at the same time bringing on lots of capacity. Plastics could easily double in the next 30 years or less. And it's bringing on capacity at a time when social pressure is mounting around the implications of plastic waste, either, in the ocean, as you've seen. There's also the issue of plastics. They attrit into microparticles in the environment, and we're not sure what those microparticles, what the implications of those are to our health. Also the petrochemical is faced with the fact that we're headed towards electric mobility, which is going to have a significant impact on the amount of oil we need to process. So there's a lot of challenges out there, and clearly the plastic industry needs more advanced recycling, and often referred to as molecular recycling. So before we talk about that, I just want to say a few things about plastics as a background. Plastics are very highly engineered materials. I mean, a lot of effort goes into designing them for very specific functions. A lot of attention is paid to precise control of the composition. And then, of course, what happens when we're done using them, they're subject to enormous amounts of commingling with other materials, contamination, and all those things compromise the ability of plastics to be reused. So again, why has plastics been such a problem recycling? It's because plastics just don't tolerate contamination. And of course, the other thing about plastics that is that the low cost of plastics depends on very large capital investment and a concentration of raw materials. So we'll look at that in more detail here. So let's take high density polyethylene as an example and look at the flow through the value chain. And this is the same 4 steps of take, make, consume, and waste. But the make step is split into 2 steps, the chemical and resin operations and the application operations. So literally today, we start with a handful of feedstocks, principally gas and oil, to make plastics. We then, as chemists, have developed thousands of what they call monomers. If you want to think about plastics as a train, monomers are the rail cars, and feedstocks are the steel that went into making the rail car. So that's how you should think about the front end of this. We then take those polymers and we create all kinds of formulations, literally hundreds of thousands of formulations in millions of applications. And then we turn those millions of applications loose on 7 billion global consumers. So in the course of going through the value chain, the complexity of what's out there goes up. And you think about high density polyethylene or the polyethylene family in general, it starts with, again, gas or oil. You make ethylene. From ethylene, you make high density polyethylene, from which we make applications that ultimately today either end up as trash, or they can end up as recycled because they've been cleaned up. And in which case we mechanically can feed back a certain portion of that, the cleaner portions of it, back into applications. And then the dirtier portions really have nowhere to go unless we implement recovery techniques, 2 that I'm going to call your attention to today, gasification or pyrolysis. And we have both of those, by the way, going on in Indiana. If we're thinking about the PET bottle, it changes a little bit in that PET is built a different way. It has 2 repeating monomers, ethylene glycol and terephthalic acid. Don't need to worry about what they are, but just that they keep repeating along the chain that we call a polymer. And from that, we make bottles and fibers and shells, clam shells, and all kinds of stuff. And the beauty of PET is not only can you mechanically recycle it, and many of its applications are fairly simple in terms of what's involved there, but we can also recover those monomers. You can take the PET family, and that includes nylons. You could put in this family, as well as polycarbonate and other things. They can be chemically disassembled back to monomers. With high density polyethylene, we have to go all the way back to feedstocks. So we'll see that in a little more detail. We'll see what that looks like in a minute. But the real challenge here is getting this concentrated flow going back. And if you think about comparison of going forward, where we're dealing with massive amounts of very straightforward and simple materials, going backwards is much tougher logistically. What I'm going to show you is what we call a hierarchy of resource productivity loops for plastics. Again, you see the same value chain, beginning with feedstocks, resin operations, applications, consumers, and end use. And then the loops, well, use, reuse, and repair brings it back to the consumer. Remanufacturing can bring it back to the application level. And mechanical recycling, which is largely what we practice today, also brings it back to the application level. So then we stack onto this ladder chemical recycling. So we can have monomer recycling, which, as I said, it works with PET and polymers like that. And then we have polyolefins, polyethylene, where we practice either pyrolysis to create a chemical called naphtha. You could think of naphtha as being like sort of kerosene. We also can gasify. Gasify is the process of sort of doing a very low level controlled burn. And because you limit the amount of oxygen, you make something called synthesis gas, which is CO and hydrogen. And those are really beautiful molecules, because from those two molecules, chemists can make virtually anything we use today. So gasification is a very powerful tool. It's what the Germans actually used to fight World War II. They gasified coal to support their fuel and chemical industry when they were cut off from oil and natural gas. Now, the last rung on the ladder is, of course, incineration, which is an energy recovery technique. It essentially amounts to what I would call the landfill in the sky, because the carbon that's embodied in, say, plastics and other hydrocarbons is reduced to CO2 and dumped into the atmosphere. Now, in looking and evaluating this hierarchy, I'm going to show you a couple ways to think about it. One is maximum resource recovery. The best resource recovery is at the top of the ladder. Reuse and repair, remanufacture, top of the ladder. Mechanical recycling, the next best thing you can do. And then chemical recycling allows us to recover a good share of carbon. Monomer recovery can be virtually 100%. Pyrolysis is in the 60 to 70% level, and then gasification is less than 50%, but very versatile. The other way to think about it is, how sensitive are these processes to contamination? And so sensitivity to contamination goes down as you go down the list. So chemical recycling through gasification is very insensitive, not completely insensitive, but it's very insensitive to contamination. Whereas, as we know, mechanical recycling, we have to go to bigger efforts to keep the product clean. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is, to do these things takes energy. So we're putting energy into the system to do these recoveries. And of course, using energy translates into making CO2 from fossil energy-based sources primarily. So if you want to minimize CO2, you want to minimize greenhouse gas effects, you want to be at the top of the ladder, where you get your best recovery. If you're dealing with a lot of contamination and there's a lot of sensitivity there, you're going to be at the bottom of the ladder, but the penalty you're going to pay is you're going to make more greenhouse gases. So that's sort of the trade-offs in this hierarchy. For those of you who like the loop sort of way of looking at this thing, this is what the loops would look like. You see reuse and repair, mechanical recycling. and then going to the left down to gasification and finally incineration. This has been referred to as the Comet chart of circular economy. Now, what do these things look like? Well, they're all, so we have monomer on the left, pyrolysis and gasification. They're all chemical processes. So these things tend to look like chemical plants, and they are chemical plants. And all these technologies have been, or at least the knowledge of how to do these technologies has been around before most people on this phone call were ever born. And some of them have been practiced longer than people on this call from when they were born. Eastman does a great job of PET recycling. They used to actually do it on X-ray film back in the 80s and 90s because primarily they wanted to recover the silver, but they could also get the polymer back out. So Eastman has a rich tradition. Sabic has done some things there. Aquafil is a Italian nylon company that takes fishing nets and carpet fiber and actually turns it into quite elegant fabrics that go into some of the best clothing lines in Europe. Loop is a company that's trying to develop a lower temperature processes. And for those of you who like Patagonia clothes, they do chemical recycling with the company Teijin, and it's again PET. Pyrolysis has been the technique that has really started to explode in recent times. Sabic does pyrolysis, not themselves directly, but through a company called Plastics Energy. And the facility you see there is a plant in Spain. It does some sorting, but it also then does pyrolysis and some chemical cleanup before they send the product out. But when you look at the list of names, you know, Chevron, Phillips, American Styrenics, Lyondell, Bissell, Dow, Exxon, BASF, you see a lot of the major chemical companies stepping into this because of the pressure they're feeling from the consumer. You also have companies like Brightmark and Brabant Engineering and IGES who are more of a venture capital companies that have chosen to specialize in doing pyrolysis as a way of recovering plastic, but also creating an income stream. The ones that are sort of highlighted in gray have a presence in Indiana or have discussed the presence in Indiana. Gasification, again, once again, is a controlled burn to give us syngas. Enerchem is probably the most well-known name today in this. Eastman Chemical is also doing it. And there's been a proposal, and I think they're moving very much forward on doing gasification of Chicago's waste in northern Indiana for the purposes of making aviation fuel. So once you've got CO and hydrogen, you can make a lot of different stuff. But I guess the importance of this page is to just point out, this is the world of the chemical industry. And they're the extended producers that really need to be engaged to make this go. The next page, I wanted to show you what some of this looks like at a little more pyrolysis, specifically what it looks like at a more detailed level. You see a pyrolysis unit there on the far left. The main component is that kiln that takes and sort of roast the polymers. And from that roast, they separate out gaseous, liquid, and solid materials. You see the isolation piece to the left of that kiln. And many will do a post-treatment, like the Plastic Energy facility I showed, which had a more complicated chemical entity attached to it. I don't have a picture of what Brightmarks look like, but in principle, it's very similar to this. Much of what they do from the pyrolysis point of view is contained inside their building, along with plastic processing to feed the process. And then some of the isolation stuff is done outside their main building. Again, if you've seen pictures of it. What does pyrolysis oil look like? This is a picture of Linda Wang at Purdue University. She has a slightly different technique for doing this, but you see that that sort of dark brown, orangish liquid. That's what pie oil would look like without further treatment. And again, Plastics Energy does treatment to it. And you can see there, the sample bottle the gentleman's holding on the right is lighter in color. And it's that kind of purity that's actually needed to go into what they call an ethylene cracker, just to make polyethylene, to close the loop. So that's what some of these things look like. And the quality you get out is based on the sophistication of the process you practice. One thing I wanted to sort of illustrate, this looks like a lot of numbers, but I'm going to walk you through it, and I think a fairly easy way to think about it, about the magnitude and the concentration of flow that's needed. And this relates to the study that you guys showed, the maps of where recycle is concentrated in Indiana. If you were to want to fuel an ethylene plant to make high density polyethylene, a typical ethylene plant scale is 1.2 million tons per year. And the US uses about 23 million tons a year. So you would need 20 of what I'm showing you in the box. If you're going to make it from naphtha, which is thought to be something similar to what we can get out of pyrolysis, it's about a 3-to-1 ratio. You need 3 naphthas for every ethylene. So you would need 3.6 million metric tons. The plastic that would be required to make that, using the conversion efficiencies at Plastic Energy, and as I said, very similar to what Brightmark is reporting, you need about 4.85 million tons of plastic to drive just one plant. It takes 40 million tons of municipal solid waste to come up with 4.8 million tons of plastic. You would need 160 pyrolysis units at the 30 million per million metric ton per year level. And that would need to be supported by 75 MRFs, judging by what the better MRFs can separate in the course of a day. So anyway, what you see is a scale of what is needed to make a pyrolysis and advanced chemical recycling go. This complexity can be reduced by blending smaller amounts of naphtha from a pyrolysis unit with virgin naphtha from the oil industry. Hopefully we get to smaller crackers, which would allow you to do this on a more reasonable basis. But this industry has to really mature, and also it has to gain access to the kind of material flow that would be necessary. 75 MRFs is a big deal just to drive one plant, and we would need 20 of them in the United States. So it's a daunting task, but one that I think it's time we take on and do it to the best we can, so that the most plastic that is today being thrown away can be recovered. So we can take some questions on this if you want to do that later. So just to summarize, what are the benefits of chemical recycling? It is very nice in that it provides a second use and resource productivity for a very problematic material called plastics. It enables the possibility of truly closing the loop. You can bring these materials back and make the same polymers with virgin properties, which is the issue with mechanical recycling alone. The recovery levels are decent. It's more tolerant of contamination than mechanical recycling. It's good for single-use packaging and products of convenience. And I think a very important thing about it is that it reduces the risk of fugitive plastics into the environment and the ocean. As I said earlier, we have no idea what's going to be the health implications long-term of plastics being attrited away to micro and nanoparticles, and they're showing up everywhere in the world. And what the consequence of that is really quite unknown, but is something that a lot of people are looking at, and because of the potential risk. What are the challenges to doing chemical recycling? Is you could see that the capital requirements to do the kind of plants that you need is tough. You need to have good economics. A lot of pyrolysis operations can't survive without a gate fee, let alone free material. And there's a challenge of scaling it. And as I said, I think that map that was shown earlier is a really kind of a beautiful way of looking at where are these raw materials, and then how do we convert them through chemical recycling. It's going to take consumer and governmental participation to get to the right kind of flow. I mean, if people were pulling out all their packaging and their products of convenience, and we had a way to recover those and direct them to pyrolysis units, that would make a big difference. So it's going to take the public, it's going to take policy. I think we have to avoid advanced chemical recycling like pyrolysis just becoming another form of waste energy. I think we want it to go back into materials, not into energy recovery. Although when you look at the complexity of scale, you can see why today the tendency is for pyrolysis oil products to go to energy. There's also a need for attention to the consequences, unintended consequences, and the environmental aspects. There are other things in plastics besides carbon and hydrogen, and where those little things go is something important to know. And so I think it's something that the industry has to really pay attention to. I think the notion of renewable energy is really essential because, as I said earlier, we're producing CO2 as we're trying to practice chemical recycling. That CO2 is leakage from the loop, and recovering that leakage because we're using energy that's renewable is essential in the long run. And the other thing is, I don't think we want advanced chemical recycling become a substitute for other critical actions we need to take, such as use reduction and increased reuse. We need to design products better for circularity. And if we just go off in a direction that chemical recycling is the answer, that can distract us from doing the things we need to do on a product design basis and also on an extended producer responsibility basis. Just to sort of close this, is chemical recycling truly advanced? The answer to that, I think you can see, is yes. Could it be part of the circular economy? Yes. Is it greenwashing? We'll see. And the reason the question of greenwashing is raised is the chemical industry is spending maybe $200 billion right now on just capacity of expansion, and a very small amount relatively on chemical recycling. So some people see this as just, an effort to put up a smokescreen. I certainly hope not. And then finally, extended producer responsibility. Yes, this could be a really key step for the chemical industry to take accountability for, the plastic that's been put out there and return it to good use in society. So those are the points I would make today. I hope it wasn't too confusing or too detailed, and it really helps you understand a little bit better what's going on here.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Miller. And I find it very interesting. I kind of look at this as the move from the legal pad to the computer. When it comes to some of the
exactly
aspects of it. And I had a thought today, and I just want to share it with the group. We look at taking SOP and making toilet tissue, and we all use it, but it's a single-use recycling commodity. I don't think anybody's recovering their used toilet tissue and putting it back into the feedstock. And I think the advanced chemical recycling certainly has a place in the solution aspect of it. And I really appreciate the very detailed overview you gave of it. It was very informative to me, and I hope to all the other board members and audiences here today. So thank you very much.
Well, I'd encourage you to think about toilet paper as one of those items that we consume. But the beauty of toilet paper, it's a renewable resource. And in fact, when we do put it back into the environment through waste streams, it has the opportunity of re-entering the biosphere and being useful. And the biosphere has the capability of replacing it. It's a little different when you get into plastics where you pull it out of the ground and it's a finite resource. And so it's a different story when it comes to, you know, things that are made from finite resources. And in general, molecular recycling, and we talked about plastics today, but everything we talked about here applies to batteries, electronics, where you have these very complex products that use things we extract out of the ground. We can't keep throwing them away, but we need advanced recycling to pull them back. And so it is the airplane, as you said earlier. And but there's a lot of things we can do as we walk, and reducing use and reusing things and buying durable goods. Those are all things that help us walk while we're trying to fly. So anyway.
We appreciate it. And I think we should feel blessed that we have a company like Brightmark in the state of Indiana. And hopefully we can support them in their endeavors. So, and others that may pop up. Yes.
I believe Terry Guerin has a question.
Yeah. Thank you. That was very, very good. Very informative. Deanna, could you send us his contact information, please?
Yes, I'll be happy.
Pyrolysis. I've always been a fan of that process, but my first exposure to that was in Michigan through the Department of Environmental Quality and a tour to Europe, and a guy by the name of Dr. Jack Fader, who was heavily involved with tire recycling. And the reason I bring them up is because the last round of grant applications we had, I think there was one grant, if memory serves me correctly, that it directly involved pyrolysis. And there was another grant application that made reference to pyrolysis. Tire pyrolysis in Michigan at that point in time didn't go anywhere because the price of oil dropped, number one, which made it economically unfeasible. But the other stumbling block was they couldn't figure out a way to have a continuous flow so that they could scale it up, since it was done under vacuum. They couldn't figure out a way to scale it up to make it economically viable. The reason I'm saying this is because some of these applications make reference to a technology that many of us are not familiar with. We almost look at it like it's a black box. And there needs to be an effort by the applicant to make sure that we understand what makes the process actually work. Because like I said, in Michigan, entire pyrolysis, it didn't work because it couldn't solve the problem of the continuous flow. So I really am impressed with pyrolysis. It works. I've seen it work. But we don't want these applications to come across as having a black box. Am I making myself clear?
Yeah. And the thing I would also just caution maybe a little bit about proposals around pyrolysis is that, as you can see, those techniques are complicated. They are capital intensive, and your ability to fund those kinds of capital intensive activities is probably well beyond your scope. However, what you can, I think, make a contribution to is the whole infrastructure of how you identify the flow stream and increase the flow stream. The work you presented earlier on the infrastructure, just knowing where the stuff is in the state of Indiana and how it can be channeled properly. And I bet you if Brightmark was on the phone, they would tell you one of their biggest challenges was the supply side of getting recycled. And it's knowing those things and supporting those things, which are, again, perhaps a little more cost reasonable, is a great thing. And I would tend to stay away from capital investment, though, and as something that is a type of grant you'd want to support.
You also, if I may, just one other comment. You made a reference to one of your charts of mixed resins going into complex plastics. One of the, besides trying to break those plastics down into individual components, there has been some endeavors, and I know Dow Chemical was involved with some of this, in coming up with processes that will allow you to make products using mixed resins, which was always a handicap, over the past years. And one of the processes that Dow devised was a process called sulfonation. And I'm wondering if, the Chemical Council is involved with some of those efforts, looking at coming up with processes that allows you to use mixed resins rather than breaking them down.
Well, that's certainly the holy grail of pyrolysis, is to be able to take complex things and use them. I would tell you, though, that if you talk to experts in pyrolysis, and Agilex, one of the companies referenced here, they put a lot of effort into understanding the basics of pyrolyzing mixed plastics. And it's common sense, but the simpler material going into pyrolysis, the better the outcome. So one of the things they've been very successful with recently is just taking simply polystyrene, which is a problem, and feeding polystyrene. You can use pyrolysis to get very high quality styrene back out. If you put in just polyethylene, you're going to get a higher quality product out, and it'll be more useful in the end. Today, the best you can do is put about 5 or 10% pyrolysis oil into a naphtha cracker. And that's because of the complexity of it. And so the simpler the inputs, the simpler the outputs, and et cetera. So again, the separation technology of the feed streams going into pyrolysis makes a big difference. And so anyway, just something to keep in mind. It gets back to source separation, and the people at Plastics Energy will tell you, if you just use mixed plastic waste, the product you get is fairly low value. If you have higher quality materials go in, the higher the value of the output. And so anyway, that's probably common sense, but it's certainly one of the challenges that the industry faces. And just thinking you can throw anything in there and expect to get something good out the end is really not the case. If you want quality out the end, you have to have some control going in. So,
well, what I was trying to get at was, instead of breaking the plastics down into individual components, take the mixed plastic and make it into another product. For instance, the Dow process that I mentioned before allows you to put sulfonated rubber or sulfonated plastics into concrete. And there's quite a bit of research at Michigan State on that. And so it allows you to use a product that really was not usable because of the resin complexity.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was getting at. And wondered
Gotcha.
if the Chem Council is involved with any research along trying to use products in that manner and not break them down.
Yes.
All right, I believe Representative Arrington had a comment.
Yes, I did. When you mentioned Brightmark, Ken, it made me remember that last week I got an invitation to tour the Brightmark facility. So I think it was an open invitation to legislators. I didn't know if the other ones on this call had seen that invitation and were planning to go. But Ken, I wondered, are there any particular things when I take the tour to be paying special attention to, or things to ask them?
I would, so my curiosity is around the material, of course. I would be very interested to see the output and smell the output and what is the quality of that output. I think Brightmark, from what I sort of gather, has done a pretty good job of getting pyrolysis to a larger scale than most people practice. And again, I'm just reflecting on their numbers. But I'd be most curious about the output, and also I would be curious about the other materials that are created in the process, where they're going. You know, where does the ash go? Where does all the what we call heteroatoms? Plastic has sulfur and nitrogen and phosphorus and all kinds of stuff. Where does that stuff go in their process? So those are kind of environmental questions that I would be very curious about. As far as legislation, I guess there's a quick point I might make there. There's two big pieces of legislation going on. One that's going on at a state level, that's 13 or 14 states have approved to encourage advanced recycling techniques. And so they want to kind of streamline, I guess, the regulatory process so that advanced recycling can move forward more effectively, because there is an urgency to get it installed. On the other side of the fence, there is a congressional level bill right now called, let's see, it's called something like Break Free from Plastic Pollution. And it takes a more aggressive view at whether pyrolysis is a legitimate recycling technique. So there are those two sort of sides of the coin that are going on right now legislatively. One, to enable it to happen more aggressively at a state level, and a national level bill before Congress to put more emphasis on extended producer responsibility, put in place a lot of the things that have worked in Europe, and figure out how things like pyrolysis fit into the equation. Even though Europe has been more aggressive on this topic, I will say they are embracing pyrolysis in various ways. There's a lot of installation of pyrolysis going on in Europe as a way to utilize plastic. So I think it's going to go forward. We just want it to go forward with high quality.
Very good. Any other comments from board members? Miller,
I'll send this presentation to Deanna in a PDF form if you want to use it. I'll put my contact information if anybody wanted to follow up specifically on anything.
Representative Arrington, did you have a comment?
Oh, no, I still had my hand, didn't take my hand down.
Oh, okay. Mr. Miller, I really appreciate it. I look at the advanced chemical recycling as a supportive means for those products that may be discarded from our traditional recycling, that we can find a home for, that is the way of the future. And anything we can do, I know company supports it. And anything we can do to move it along. And, we look forward to working with the Brightmark plant in Indiana. And I just think it's a great resource.
Good, thank you.
Thank you very much. And next. Well, Deanna, the next item on the agenda is number 8. We have the next meeting date of August 5th, 2021. And remaining 2021 schedule is October 21st would be I guess that would be the grant award meeting, correct? I believe you're muted, Deanna.
Just saw that. Yes, that's correct. I also wanted to make a quick note and maybe short discussion of where we are at with virtual meetings versus starting to meet in person again and comfort levels. Excuse me. Currently, we're under the still the executive order that allows for completely virtual meetings. As we move forward, there was state legislation passed to allow kind of what we had briefly talked about before the pandemic hit and we went all virtual, of having kind of a hybrid format where we can allow for a portion of the board members to be on virtually. It does say that at least half of the board members will need to still be in person. And it also requires that the governing body, in this case, that would be the board, to adopt a written policy establishing those procedures for the electronic participation. So I don't know if, Michael is still on, if he has any additional comments, but we will begin working up on that draft so that we are prepared when the executive order is dropped to allow for the kind of that virtual hybrid of in-person and virtual meetings forthcoming. So go ahead.
Yeah, so we were going to also try and corroborate with the Environmental Rules Board and make sure that any boards relating to IDEM kind of have a similar written policy enacted so that there's no confusion one way or another. We've kind of done the similar thing with how it's gone during the pandemic, and we thought that would be a good idea to go. Questions we kind of have that we couldn't really get when we looked at this new law more in depth, where this new House bill, where do we have to vote on it with half of the people there and kind of the style of the bill, or can we do it all digitally? Can we all be remote, kind of given the needs of the pandemic? So we're going to look into that and kind of figure that out and let everybody know as soon as we can here. Other than that, that's really all I've got. We'll be looking at that policy. We'll help everybody make sure everybody gets a chance to see it before we have the chance to vote on it, and that everybody gets a chance to kind of preview everything. And we'll be working with Deanna and her crew to get that out soon.
Does any of the board have questions or comments on that process? Okay. So we'll keep you up to date. Who knows where we're going to be at in August if that executive order will be dropped by then. So if that executive order is dropped, we may have an in-person meeting. I don't anticipate that by August. It's a short time, actually. But we won't be able to have, if that executive order is dropped, we won't be able to have a hybrid option until we adopt this policy.
That's my understanding.
Yes. Okay.
And that's not something that we can vote on at the next meeting. That has to come out of Mr. French's office.
It will be something that is crafted probably by the agency. We have people in our rules section that will work on a policy that we'll use for both the Environmental Rules Board as well as the Recycling Marketing and Development Board. And so once we get that and we make sure that it fits for both boards and that everybody is, happy with it, we'll send it on to you guys and give you a chance to preview it before we vote on it ultimately.
Very
And we
good.
can tailor it. We can make sure that we tailor it if you guys have any specific needs. The law itself, or the bill that's going to be the order, it gives you a chance to make it more strict than it is. It gives you a chance to make specifics about the time people need to give the head of the board before they are digital in the next meeting. There are certain things that you can kind of play around with per the law.
All right. Thank you. Personally, I'm 100% in favor of in-person meetings as soon as possible, because I think we get much better debate or conversation, if you will, with regard to subject matter when we're in person versus digital. But this is the best option we have available currently. And I think, Deanna, with your leadership, we're being very successful with it.
Thank you. I did want to also make a quick note about, since we mentioned that August 5th date, that reminded me, Resource Recycling Conference is also those same days, the 5th and 6th, I believe. It is gone all virtual again this year, and they have an early bird special right now that you can attend the conference, $200. If the board is interested in attending the Resource Recycling Conference, they always have many good speakers, lots of good information. There is a funding available in our operation budget to help with conference and education of our board members as well. So talk to me if you are interested in that.
Do you have an outline of what they're going to present this year?
Not handy, I apologize.
Any other questions? Oh, hearing none. Let's see if I just want to make sure we don't have anything else on the.
That covers it.
No, I guess looking at the agenda, we're pretty much covered. Any other comments or questions from any of the audience members?
Yes, I did. And I'm sorry, Allison, I forgot to mention the IRC conference as well. Registration is open for the IRC conference as well, June 8th through 10th, and that will be a virtual option as well.
Okay. Well, without any other further business, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move. Terry.
Motion by Mr. Guerin. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Hackman. Any discussion? Those in favor, aye.
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 Those opposed? Hearing none, motion carries unanimously. I would like to personally thank each and every one of you for your time today. Thought it was a good meeting. I thought it was a very interesting piece with Mr. Miller on the advanced chemical recycling. And it gives us a glimpse into the future. So thank you all very much. Have a great day. And we look forward to meeting with you again here in a few months. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.